On September 11th, 2001, the unthinkable happened. 2,992 people died that morning in the USA as everyone around the world watched the attack unfold live on television. In the days after 9/11, it became clear that the USA and the CIA knew exactly who was responsible for these attacks. The CIA had been watching Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda network for years, but had done nothing to stop them carrying out the terrorist attacks of 9/11.
When the attack of 9/11 occurred, I think more than anything else, it was a feeling that this probably didn't have to have happened had we been more aggressive against Osama bin Laden.
This whole operation, months in the planning, relatively expensive in terrorist terms, and so involved and intricate, completely got by them. They missed it completely.
God, that was a failure of intelligence, it was a failure of imagination, it was a systemic failure of every intelligence service that was in the least bit professional.
Someone who knows exactly what's inside the CIA's classified bin Laden files is Mike Schur, the CIA analyst responsible for spying on al-Qaeda from late 1995.
The agency began looking at Osama bin Laden primarily because of external factors. In the middle 90s, we shifted away from a kind of an exclusive look at Lebanese Hezbollah and the Palestinian groups to a broader look at Sunni extremism around the world. And almost wherever we looked, bin Laden's name came up as a benefactor, as an inspiration, or as a nuts and bolts provider of military weapons or documents.
The very reason the CIA exists is to stop America's enemies from attacking the USA. Yet the CIA failed to gather any intelligence about the World Trade Center attack before it occurred.
Bin Laden pretty much set it out what his strategy was going to be against the United States. There weren't a lot of surprises in bin Laden. So when you look at the analytical work of the CIA ultimately, and the failure to realize the role of al-Qaeda in 1993 in the World Trade Center, and the fact that bin Laden always bent back to his failures to try to get it right, you have to wonder how in the world did this intelligence failure take place?
Incredibly, this wasn't the first time allies of Osama bin Laden had tried to blow up the Twin Towers. Back in 1993, Islamic terrorists bombed the World Trade Center, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000 more. Yet the CIA still had no idea what was coming on 9/11.
We did not have enough people, and we did not have enough people who were experienced on the Sunni target, on the Islamic target generally. And that remains true to this day.
We had heard testimony by CIA Director George Tenet during the 9/11 investigation that he had declared war on al-Qaeda in the late 1990s. However, the investigators were able to uncover that he had only applied maybe 1 or 2 or as many as half a dozen analysts, so one has to question what kind of war that was.
By assigning only a few people to the al-Qaeda investigation, the CIA made a huge mistake. But it wasn't the CIA's only error in handling the bin Laden case.
They simply didn't have enough Arabic speakers. They didn't have enough Arabic speakers, crucially, on the ground in the Middle East. And they didn't have enough that are listening to all the stuff and reading all the stuff and analysing all the stuff. And so in that respect, they were blind. They learnt the hard way. It's no good watching from a satellite and listening from the radio bug. You've got to have more than that. They are only just now beginning to start to infiltrate. They're paying lots of money to people, and they are getting sometimes fairly good information, but they're starting from 911, where, of course, we now know they should have started in the early 90s.
If the CIA failed to spot 9/11, then you have to ask, will it be able to do anything to stop the next attack?
At the end of the day, law enforcement and the CIA is faced with an impossible task because no one has moved forward in protecting the borders of the United States. It's very unlikely we can stop the next attack in America.
When Bush and Blair proposed the invasion of Iraq back in early 2003, both leaders insisted the only reason for the war was to stop Saddam from using his weapons of mass destruction on the rest of the world. They claimed this wasn't a humanitarian mission to save the Iraqi people from Saddam, or one to secure access to Iraq's rich oil reserves.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
The president stood before the world and presented an intelligence report from the CIA that proved Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and that he was intent on using them. Fast forward 2 years, and we all now know that no weapons of mass destruction have ever been found in Iraq. The CIA either made a massive intelligence mistake, or it chose to sex up its estimate to give Bush the war he wanted. The story is still unfolding. Scott Ritter, a UN chief weapons inspector who worked in Iraq before the war, maintains the CIA knew that Saddam had disarmed, but that they chose to ignore the facts.
Weapons of mass destruction was a fantasy. We had accounted for the production equipment. We had accounted for the spare parts. We had accounted for the missiles. And yet when I briefed the CIA, they rejected it. They said that our work was flawed because it relied upon statements made by Iraqi officials that couldn't be trusted. The CIA said there were up to 200 missiles left in Iraq. We found nothing. It didn't matter what the facts were. They had no intention of allowing the inspectors ever to determine that Iraq had complied with its obligation to disarm.
The CIA turned to weapons expert Robert Gallucci to analyze their intelligence for them.
I thought that there was a very good case, even a conclusive case, that Iraq had regenerated its programs in chemical weapons and biological weapons. I came to that conclusion, I think, based on assumptions about Iraqi intentions. Saddam was still there. Capabilities, scientists were still there. Time, opportunity, been 4 years without inspectors.
The way in which the intelligence services looked at the Saddam Hussein regime was as the type of regime that lied about whether it had weapons of mass destruction or not. Consequently, they interpreted almost every bit of information which seemed to suggest that he might have as being information showing that he did have.
They didn't have somebody inside their regime at a high enough level who knew exactly what the truth was. And it was all satellite images. It was all guys who'd escaped 10 years earlier. The information wasn't new enough. The information wasn't hard enough.
The CIA made serious errors when analysing the intelligence coming out of Iraq before the war.
What we had is the CIA lying, cheating, and deceiving the American people itself for the benefit of the president. And that's a violation of the moral compass of the CIA, if there is indeed a moral compass at the CIA. This is wrong.
Nowhere in the CIA's program does it say, "Thou shalt tell the big boss that which he wishes to hear." And if that is what the CIA now does, then they can boil it down to one person. You just hire a yes man. He can walk around telling you what you want to hear.
Making intelligence mistakes is one thing, but many argue that George Tenet, the CIA director, fixed the WMD report to back up President Bush in his drive to go to war with Iraq.
Come in here and say thank you.
There's no way the director of the CIA could have believed any of the intelligence information they had out there that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. If he believed it, he was incompetent.
The whole world now knows how massively the CIA got it wrong on WMD. Trust in the CIA is at an all-time low.
The next time any Western politician says, "Believe me, I've got these really cool secret documents that say that there's a bad guy out there and we've got to go get him," I mean, he'll be out of office the next day. I mean, it's now the most comical lie you can tell in politics.
Even people with goodwill say, yeah, look, everyone agreed he had WMD, but you still made a mistake. Why should we believe you this time? Whether this time is North Korea, whether it's Iran, whether it's something around the corner that they're trying to look at that's going to come up and bite us, whatever it is, people are going to be even more sceptical than they always have been.
The threat to this country, the threat to the world, is terrorism. And the antidote to terrorism is intelligence.
We're at war with Islamist extremists, and in war, you have to take some extraordinary measures in order to be successful.
They simply have to be dealt with. The Osama bin Ladens and the cells of people that are still out there, they just simply have to be removed.
If the CIA is going to target someone, if there's going to be an assassination plot, we're going to bloody our own image around the world and create more terrorists.
When you have an agency that operates in the dark, you are going to have extraordinary abuses of power.
The truth is that people are dying in our name, people are getting murdered in our name, people are being experimented on in our name.
The CIA, as it's currently manifested, not be tolerated. It must be done away with. We would be better off today just doing away with the CIA and starting over.
It's a deadly subversive cancer of corruption and incompetence within American society and as a projection of that society overseas. It's an enormous danger.
I'd have to say, unless we have a second 9/11, the odds of the agency changing over the next 25 years are almost zero.
So, happy birthday to all our friends at the CIA. That's 60 years of defending our liberty, or, to put it another way, attacking our freedoms. And as we enter the 5th year on the war on terror, please don't think for a moment that the CIA will play any less of a role, or that it'll use any less controversial tactics than it has done in the last 60 years. Expect to see plenty more headlines and to hear plenty more secrets of the CIA in the years to come. Good night.